Hello, everybody. Welcome to my podcast. Today, I want to talk about this quote I've seen Nigerian post many times that when Nigeria wakes up, Africa will become unstoppable. But I always ask myself, when will Nigeria wake up for Africa to become unstoppable? Some people say Africa will only rise up when Nigeria rises up. And I ask myself, when will Nigeria rise up? Because I feel this is like I don't support this quote because I feel this quote is nonsense and myopic view. Let me tell you why. Let me start with something small. Other countries have already moved on past Nigeria, so why should they stop and wait for Nigeria? Let me just start something with electricity, for example. Ethiopia has more electricity than Nigeria. More Ethiopians are connected to the electric grid than Nigeria. More Kenyans are connected to the electric grid than Nigeria. More Tanzanians are connected to the electric grid than Nigeria. Ugandans. So, if Nigeria can't provide a basic thing like electricity, regardless of Nigeria's abundance of resources like oil, Nigeria has a lot of oil, Nigeria has a lot of natural resources compared, for example, to Kenya, to Ethiopia, to Uganda, to Tanzania. But Nigeria has failed to even provide something basic like electricity to its citizens. These countries that I've mentioned have more electricity to their sorry. These countries I've mentioned, their citizens are connected to the electric grid than Nigeria. So why should they wait for Nigeria? They are moving on already. Tanzania is constructing the longest, for example, the longest railroad in Africa. Kenya has one of the best internets in Africa and electricity connection. Ethiopia the same internet and electricity is provided to the citizens more than Nigeria. So why should they wait for Nigeria? If Nigeria can't provide something basic, even like electricity, to their citizens, regardless of Nigeria abundance of natural resources, even oil, why should they wait for Nigeria? If Nigeria that smart, if Nigeria is the smartest people as they claim to be in the world and in Africa, Nigeria should be better than these countries. So for me, I totally disagree with this point because for me, I think countries have moved on past Nigeria. Let me tell you why. If Africa is to wait for Nigeria, it will take 200 years. A survey showed that for every Nigerian to have, a survey showed that for every Nigerian to be connected to the electric grid, it will take close to 100 years. And a survey showed for every Kenyan to connect it to the electric grid, it will take less than 20 years from now, this year. The same thing with Ethiopia. It will take not more than 30 years for every Ethiopian to be connected to the electric grid. In Tanzania, it showed 20 years from this year that Tanzanians, each one will be connected to the electric grid. But in Nigeria, it's going to take more than 50 to 100 years for every Nigerian to be connected to the electric grid. If just being connected to the electric grid is going to take Nigeria 100, more than 50 years, close to 100 years, why should Africa wait for Nigeria so that Africa is unstoppable? You understand? Those are a few questions I ask. It is about critical thinking here. It's something simple. If something like electricity that Nigerians can't provide to their citizens, for every Nigerian to be connected to the electric grid, it's going to take more than 50 years, close to 100 years. Why should Africa wait for Nigeria, regardless of Nigeria's abundance of natural resources? Another thing is hospitals. It showed that Nigeria is lacking hospitals. Every Nigeria is behind in doctor and hospital. Their health is one of the worst in Africa. Why should other countries wait for you? Nigeria, I saw one time, Buhari went to England for nearly 1 year. No, sorry, for nearly 1 month for medical treatment. I'm forgetting another Nigerian president, I'm forgetting his name. He died in Saudi Arabia waiting for treatment. Why should another country wait for Nigeria? Nigerian, their doctors are not enough. Nigeria has one of the lowest doctor to patient ratio in the world and in Africa. Kenya has a better patient to doctor ratio. Tanzania has a better patient to doctor ratio than Nigeria. So why should people wait for Nigeria? These basic things, Nigeria has failed to solve them. When should Africa wait for another 100 years? No, Africa is moving on. Ethiopia has moved on. Kenya is moving on. Tanzania is moving on. Namibia, Uganda, Rwanda. These countries are moving on. Egypt, these countries are moving on. They're not waiting for Nigeria because it's going to take Nigeria many years. If Africa is there to wait for Nigeria to become unstoppable, we are doomed. Listen again. Africa doesn't have to. Africa doesn't have to wait for Nigeria for Africa to become unstoppable, because it means we shall be doomed. Because Nigeria, it may take them another 200 years for them to fix their issue, yet other countries will have solved their issues in less than 50 years. I'll appreciate if you leave a comment. What's your take on this? Should Africa wait for Nigeria for Africa to become unstoppable, for Africa to rise up, or Africa should just move on and not wait for Nigeria? Because there's no way Nigeria can be a thermometer, a measurement for Africa's success and African being unstoppable. I'll appreciate if you leave a comment, and thank you, and bye bye.